How are I wanted to make a second video about paraphrasing because it's really a key skill for students in 099. Paraphrasing is a skill that you're going to need for the rest of your academic career. And so I think it's really important that I give you a number of different ways to think about it and some really concrete strategies for how to do it. So hopefully you remember way back when I gave you a presentation about show, don't tell. And remember, the idea is that when you write, you might want to just tell, like you might want to write a sentence that says, my daughter is special and beautiful, but that good writers often slow down and show what they want the reader to know so that the reader kind of figures it out without the author saying it directly. And for that presentation, we looked at a quote from a former student at CCP who wrote an essay called Malia, My Daughter. And she actually wrote, it means princess in Arabic. When she was born, I knew she wore a crown. It also means flower in Spanish, and the way she blossoms, I just know she's a rare flower. I know it's probably cheesy, but she's my flower princess. And what I want to point out is that when you paraphrase, what you're basically doing is the reverse. You're taking a showing sentence, like the second one in this slide, and you're turning it into a telling sentence which captures the key point that the author's trying to say. So in other words, that top sentence is a paraphrase of the bottom sentence. Let's see if this will let me go to another slide. So here's another example of how a showing sentence can be paraphrased into a telling sentence. So the sentence below, Mr. Next storms into class, a bull chasing 33 red flags, is a great example of a showing sentence. I can visualize this teacher and I do not want to be in his class. But what the quote is really saying is that the teacher scares the student. So again, the showing sentence can be paraphrased into a telling sentence. Here's another example. So once again, the top is the telling sentence, God creates humans, and the sentence below, but now, O Lord, you are our Father, we are the clay and you are potter, and all of us are the work of your hand, is a showing sentence, right? Because it's using the imagery of making a pot to show the idea of the creation of humans within the Christian belief system. So let's try one. This is another sentence that I used to illustrate showing. The room was strewn with pizza boxes, plastic cups, potato chips, and a bit of dry cheese was hanging from the wall. Whoopsies. So if I were to think about the sentence, I would say that all of these images are really saying that the room was messy. So if I wanted to paraphrase this sentence, I would say the room was messy. Okay. So here's another one, and this is from an essay that I wrote about my obnoxious rooster, Alfred. The two chicks grew up in my home. They spent their days eating freeze-dried mealworms, blueberries, and my flowers. They chased each other between the legs of my dog and over the backs of my sleeping cats. At night, they perched on my shoulder, warbling in my ear. So this could be saying the chicks had a peaceful childhood, or when they were young, the chicks had a peaceful life, or I might say a happy life. So those would be paraphrases, again, that take all of these images and turn them into declarative, simple, clear, direct statements. And then finally, here's one from Tyson, the Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? And in this one, I'm actually going to walk you through the steps. Okay, so here's the quote. The flip side of not noticing your own culture is one of the great pleasures of foreign travel. Realizing that you hadn't noticed about your own country and noticing what the people of other countries no longer realize about themselves. And of course, this makes me think about when we used to be able to travel to foreign countries or to different states or even to different cities, and how noticing the differences makes you realize that there are a lot of things in our own world that we just accept as if it's the truth or the reality for everyone everywhere, but that actually every place you go has some particular qualities that that make it different, but that you don't tend to notice it in your own world. You notice it when you're looking at a different world or a different community. So here we're going to talk about the strategy. So the first thing that students sort of struggle with when they paraphrase is that they want to basically take the structure of the sentence that the author has written and start changing the words. So instead of saying the flip side, you might say the other side of not noticing, of not seeing your own culture, your own world. And what you're doing is you're swapping out words, but you're keeping the original sentence structure that the author used. And that's a bit of a trap because you don't want to just change the words. You want to really revise the entire sentence. And this is what I consider the key strategy to doing that. You need to recognize that, as we learned in 098 when we were talking about subjects and verbs, a sentence is going to have a grammatical subject. And in this sentence, the grammatical subject is flip side. But this sentence is not about flip sides, right? I think this sentence is about people who travel. So I think of this as the grammatical subject is what's the subject in the sentence of the verb, but the true topic is often not the grammatical subject. And often the true topic is people. So what I do is I find the true topic and then I start my paraphrase with that word or phrase. And then I think, what is this sentence telling me about people who travel? Well, I think it's telling me that people who travel are more likely to observe things about other cultures because they are in strange places. And that what they realize is that what they're seeing seems obvious and uninteresting to the people who live where they're traveling, and that might be true also about where they live, that there are things that they're not noticing or thinking about. So the next thing, and this requires me to get rid of my screen, I'm sorry about that, but I need to be able to type in here, is to start translating each of the different elements of the quote. And what I do is I go from punctuation mark to punctuation mark. So here I've gone up to the colon, and then I'm going to stop. The next punctuation mark is a comma, and the last one is a period. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to translate each of these sections so that I can try to understand them and explain them. So the first one is, the flip side of not noticing your own culture is one of the great pleasures of foreign travel. So I've already decided that I'm going to say people who travel, and then I'm going to say, what is this passage telling me about people who travel? That people who travel enjoy discovering different cultures, right? And then I'm going to look at the next quote, realizing what you hadn't noticed about your own culture. So I might say, give it a period, they discover that there are things about their own communities that they don't see because they are familiar. And now I'm going to go to the last part, and noticing what the people of other countries no longer realize about themselves, and discovering things about a foreign culture that the people who live there don't even see. So as you can see, what I've done is I've started with what I think of as the true topic, not the flip side, and then going chunk by chunk. So up to each punctuation mark, I have translated into my own words what each section is saying about people who travel. So then the last thing I'm going to do is take a look at what I wrote and make sure that it makes sense. So people who travel enjoy discovering different cultures. They discover that there are things about their own communities that they don't see because they are familiar and discovering. So that doesn't make sense, right? They discover that there are things about their own communities that they don't see because they are familiar. And I think what we need to do is say they discover, because that way it kind of sounds like I'm not changing the subject of what I'm talking about. So they, the people who travel. So let's see again, that they don't see because they're familiar. And they discover things about a foreign culture that the people who live there don't see. So I have now really explained without using the original language or the original sentence structure what this quote means. So I hope that this is helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Paraphrasing is really hard, but it's a skill that's worth mastering.